Hello, I'm your storyteller. If you enjoy true horror stories, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments. What's your favorite horror story topic? Now, without further ado, let's get into this week's horror stories. I was excited when I booked the Airbnb for my weekend getaway. It was my first time using the service. After a long week at work, I wanted some alone time, and this cozy apartment in the heart of the city seemed perfect. It had great reviews, beautiful decor, and was close to some of my favorite spots, and it was okay for young people like myself to rent it. Apparently, some Airbnbs won't rent to people under the age of 25. I just turned 21 a couple of weeks before renting, so it was perfect. I arrived late in the evening, and after a brief tour from the host, I settled in, eager to unwind. The apartment was stunning, with exposed brick walls and vintage furnishings. However, as I settled in, I couldn't shake an odd feeling. The host, a middle-aged man named Gary, had been a bit too friendly, lingering just a little too long as he showed me around. He kept mentioning how the apartment was a safe space, especially for young girls like me, as he put it, which felt strange but harmless. As I unpacked, I noticed a really small camera mounted on the wall in the bathroom. It blended in and was hard to see. At first glance, I thought it was a quirky addition, perhaps part of the decor. I remembered reading in the listing that the owner had a background in photography. But as I stood in front of the mirror, a knot of unease formed in my stomach. What was the camera for? Not sure if it was part of the decor, I threw a towel on it and decided to focus on relaxing. After a long shower, I got dressed and went to relax on the couch, but I kept thinking about the camera in the bathroom. Later that evening, I was scrolling through my phone, and a thought struck me. What if the camera was recording? A shiver ran down my spine as I wondered if it was some weird voyeuristic installation. Unable to resist, I decided to investigate further. I grabbed my laptop and sat down on the floor of the bathroom, staring at the camera. I had no idea how to access whatever footage it might be recording, but I felt an overwhelming urge to uncover the truth. I dug through my backpack for a USB cable, thinking I could connect my laptop to the camera somehow. As I fiddled with the wires, I caught my reflection in the mirror, and my heart skipped a beat. There was a brief flicker of movement behind me, just in my periphery. I whipped around, but there was nothing there. Just the bathroom door, slightly open. I took a deep breath, willing myself to calm down. I turned back to the camera, finally managing to connect the cable. With trembling fingers, I opened a file on my laptop, but instead of footage, it was just a series of images that were grainy and distorted. My stomach churned as I realized they were photos of the bathroom taken from different angles at various times. Then I noticed something chilling. The timestamps on the images were all from the past week. Suddenly, a noise broke the silence as Gary announced himself. I was shocked. My instincts screamed for me to hide the laptop. I quickly disconnected the IT, slipping it under the sink just as the bathroom door swung open. Gary stood there, smiling. "Everything okay in here?" Yeah, just checking out the decor," I stammered, forcing a smile. I felt like I was suffocating under his gaze. "Good. I hope you're enjoying your stay. Let me know if you need anything." He lingered for a moment longer than necessary before leaving. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. What was he doing in the apartment now? I was supposed to have it for myself. I should have said something to him. I'm pretty sure it was illegal for him to just enter unannounced, but being my young, dumb self, I didn't say anything. As Gary's footsteps faded down the hall, I took a deep breath. I couldn't stay in the bathroom any longer, so I gathered my things and stepped back into the living room. The images on my laptop haunted me. Who had been taking those pictures, and why? And why did Gary just enter the apartment? I decided to keep the laptop close, so I tucked it beneath the throw pillow on the couch, just in case. I needed a plan. Maybe I should check the apartment for other hidden cameras. The thought sent a shiver down my spine, but I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that I was being watched. I started my search in the living room, looking behind picture frames and under furniture. Everything seemed normal until I reached a small bookshelf near the window. As I moved a few books aside, I noticed something shiny peeking out from behind a thick novel. I pulled it out, my heart sinking as I realized it was another camera. This one looked newer and more sophisticated. There was a piece of black tape on it. I removed it and discovered a blinking red light that suggested it was active. I quickly shoved it back behind the book. I had to get out of there, but I couldn't just leave. I needed real evidence. I returned to the bathroom with my laptop. I flipped it open, hoping to find something useful. As I scrolled through the distorted images, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Gary. "Hope you're settling in well. Let me know if you need anything." My hands were shaking as I stared at the screen. Something about the way he phrased it felt menacing. I decided I couldn't stay in the apartment any longer. I needed to call the police and report what I found, but I couldn't risk letting Gary know. I decided I would head to the nearest cafe to make the call. I grabbed my things and made my way to the door, but just as I reached for the handle, I heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching. Fearing it was Gary again, I ducked into the closet beside the front door, hoping to remain hidden. As I listened to Gary's footsteps get closer, I began to fear for my life. If he knew I had found the cameras, he'd surely not let me get away. "Where are you?" he called out playfully, and I could hear him moving around the apartment. "I know you're in here." I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. I tried to figure out what options I had. I knew it was only a matter of time before he found me. I could try to make a run for it, but if he caught me, I didn't know what he might do. I listened as he continued to search. I could hear him open and closing drawers, which I thought was weird, as he surely knew I wouldn't be able to fit in any drawers. That's when I realized he probably had armed himself with a knife from the kitchen drawers. Then I heard the soft click of the bathroom door opening again. "Come on out, I promise I won't bite," Gary called out. I swallowed hard, debating whether to stay hidden or make a break for the door. Just then, I heard a muffled noise from the bathroom, like something had fallen. Gary's footsteps turned toward the sound, and I knew this was my chance. I pushed the closet door open slowly, peering out to see Gary's back turned toward me in the bathroom. I took a deep breath, gathering all the courage I had, and sprinted toward the front door, flinging it open and sprinting down the hallway. I kept sprinting further than I thought I was able to. I ran toward the nearest streetlight, desperate for safety. I reached for my phone and dialed the police. "There's a man in my Airbnb who's been recording me without my consent. I think he might be armed with a knife." The operator assured me help was on the way, but I didn't feel safe yet. I was standing alone in the middle of the street. As I waited for the police to arrive, I looked around the corner. I could see the apartment from where I was standing. Everything was dark inside. I didn't know where Gary was. I could hear the sound of sirens in the distance, but I knew I wasn't safe yet. I couldn't let him catch me again. The cops arrived, and it turns out Gary was still in the apartment. I bet he was trying to delete all the creepy photos he had taken. He was arrested, and after giving my statement to the police, I was let go. They offered to pay for a hotel room, which I gladly said yes to. In that moment, I vowed to never use Airbnb again. The thought of that apartment and Gary and what he would have done to me if he had caught me, I don't want to think about it. The Airbnb I rented was a quaint little house in the city I was passing through. My plan was to stay for a couple of days. The host, a middle-aged man with a friendly demeanor, assured me I would love the peace and quiet this part of town offered. Little did I know how quickly that peace would turn into something sinister. I arrived and started to settle into the cozy house, enjoying the solitude. As night fell, I curled up on the couch with my phone. Eventually, I decided to head to bed. As I lay there in the dark, I started to hear weird noises. It sounded like someone was walking around outside the bedroom. Starting to feel afraid and paranoid, I strained to listen, trying to convince myself that I was just imagining it. But then I heard it again, and there was no doubt it was real. They were approaching the bedroom. I started to panic. Who could it be? My brain raced with possibilities, but none offered any comfort. Suddenly, the door creaked open. I tried to lay still. I didn't want to let whoever it was know I was awake. I could hear someone enter the room. It was too dark to see anything, but I felt a presence in the air. I wanted to scream. The sound of shuffling feet came closer. I got goosebumps all over my body as I heard the person crawl down and under my bed. My body was paralyzed with fear. I could hardly breathe. I clenched my fists, preparing myself to run for the door at the first opportunity. As I lay there, every nerve in my body on high alert, I couldn't help but wonder what I was dealing with. Was it an intruder? Or something else entirely? I felt utterly helpless. Minutes felt like hours, and my thoughts spiraled deeper into dread. I could hear faint, shuffling movements beneath the bed, accompanied by a soft breathing. I knew I had to act. Finally, after what felt like hours, I quietly swung my legs over the side of the bed, preparing to jump up and run. But just then, the breathing stopped. The room was now dead silent. I glanced at the door. It was still slightly open. I had to make my move now. Gathering all my strength, I sprang to my feet and dashed for the door. As I crossed the room, I heard someone moving under the bed. I knew whoever it was. They were coming for me. I flung the door open and ran down the hallway. I reached the living room, scrambling for my phone to call for help. When I got it, I ran for the front door. Just as I was about to reach for the doorknob, I heard loud, bare feet come running just behind me. I flung the door open and ran outside as fast as I could. I kept running until I reached a gas station down the road. I stood there in my underwear, probably looking like a crazy guy. But when I explained my situation to the worker, he assured me that he'd call the cops for me. He took me out back where I could calm down again. The cops arrived at the gas station shortly after. They escorted me back to the Airbnb. I sat in their car while they searched the house. I was expecting them to come out with someone in cuffs at any minute now. I was tired, and as I leaned back, I glanced out the window of the cop car. And there, standing 100 feet away near some bushes, was a woman in bare feet and a gray dress. Shortly after spotting her, she faded into the dark. I tried to open the cop car's door, but they were locked. I couldn't get the cops' attention and had to wait for them to finish the search. When they came outside, I told them what I just saw. They looked at me like they were suspecting me of being crazy or lying. They pointed their flashlights towards the bushes where I saw the woman, but she was gone. Unable to do anything about the situation, they told me to go inside and lock the doors. They really weren't of much help. I had already locked the doors prior to going to bed, so maybe whoever it was already inside the house hiding at the time of my arrival. It was safe to say that I didn't want to stay there for another minute. I quickly packed my things and drove off. I ended up sleeping at a nearby motel. It wasn't exactly great, but it was far better than sleeping in fear. I had finally decided to treat myself with some vacation. I found a charming Airbnb nestled in the woods, far away from the hustle and bustle of city life. The photos showed a rustic cabin, complete with a cozy fireplace and a view of a serene lake. I imagined the things I could do: long walks in the fresh air and evenings spent curled up with a good book. When I arrived, the sun was beginning to set, so the sky had this beautiful orange color. I parked my car and stepped out. As I walked toward the cabin, I noticed a strange feeling settle over me, the one you get when you feel you're being watched. I didn't think more of it at the time, but that was a huge mistake, as I was about to find out later. Inside, the cabin was just as beautiful as I had hoped. The interior was warm and inviting, filled with vintage furniture and soft lighting. I dropped my bags by the fireplace and took a moment to appreciate my surroundings. As I began to unpack, I heard a noise coming from the back of the cabin. It sounded like someone talking softly. "Hello?" I called out instinctively. As I expected, there was no response, so I figured it was just the house making noises. Dismissing my unease, I made myself a cup of tea and settled onto the couch with a book. Just as I began to lose myself in the pages, I heard the noise again. It was definitely a man's voice murmuring. It sounded like he was having a conversation outside the cabin. I sat my book down and stood up. I couldn't see anyone outside from the windows, but I decided to call out anyway. "Hello? Is someone there?" Still no answer. Maybe it was a neighbor. There were, after all, other cabins nearby, or maybe it was another guest. But the listing had mentioned the cabin was secluded, and I hadn't seen any other houses on my way in, so the neighbors weren't close. The talking had stopped, so I shook off the feeling and decided to ignore it. Later that evening, I was in the small kitchen getting ready to make some food. As I rummaged through the cabinets, I heard a loud knock on the front door. It made me jump. Who could it be? I cautiously approached the door, glancing through the peephole. Standing there was a man who looked like he was in his mid-30s. He seemed to be disheveled and out of breath. "Hey, miss," he said with a nervous smile on his face. "I'm so sorry to intrude. I think there's been a mix-up with the booking. I'm the host's friend. I was told I could stay here for the weekend." I hesitated, unsure of what to do. The listing had said no one else would be there. I replied with, I don't think," but he cut me off. "Please, I just need a place to crash for the night. I promise I won't be any trouble." I opened the door slightly, still very wary. "I'm not sure. Can you call the host?" I asked, but he shook his head. "No service out here. It's spotty. I swear I won't bother you. I just need somewhere to sleep." Against my better judgment, I let him in. As soon as he crossed the threshold, I felt a wave of unease come over me. There was something off about him and this whole situation. "I'll just take the couch," he said, plopping down without waiting for my response. "You can have the bedroom." I nodded, feeling trapped. I tried to relax, but every time I glanced at him, the hair on the back of my neck stood up. I went to the kitchen, attempting to distract myself with a snack while keeping an eye on him. He kept glancing at me. As the night wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I excused myself to the bathroom, hoping to collect my thoughts. As I splashed water on my face, I heard the soft murmur of a voice again, and that's when I realized that the voice I heard earlier had to have come from him. I peered through the crack of the door. He was standing in the hallway, staring at the family photos I brought. I felt panic inside me. Why was he looking at them? "I know you're in there watching me," he said. "I just want to talk." My body began to shake as I realized he wasn't who he said. He was someone far more evil, and who knows what he had in plans for me. I needed to get out. I quietly opened the bathroom window and climbed out. I prayed that he wouldn't hear me. My plan was to drive out of there as fast as possible, and luckily I always keep my keys in my pocket with my phone. I hit the ground as quietly as I could, and I sneaked towards my car, hoping he wouldn't notice me. Just as I reached the car and opened the door, I heard the cabin door swing open behind me. "Where do you think you're going?" he yelled. I got in my car and fumbled for my keys. Just as I started the engine, he hit my side window. He tried to break it with his fists. I was now in full panic mode. I put the car in drive and sped out of there. I drove away with the cabin disappearing in the rearview mirror, but the feeling of knowing that I almost died never left me. And the worst part is, the cops never found him.